All right, what's up, guys? We've got another episode of the Growth by Shawn podcast. So I'm here with Vasilis Axios. How are you,
You
brother?
got it right. You got it right.
Yeah,
That's
that
perfect.
works. All right,
Yeah,
can't
perfect.
complain. So
I'm great. I'm great. Excellent, actually.
yeah, we connected through one of the goats, Billy G. He had a
Mhm.
podcast that came out today with me, which was a good one. So if you haven't listened to it yet, either listen to that or um Vasily had done a interview with Billy G on his page, the once a week on YouTube. Either of them are going to bring you value, so I'd recommend listening to either one of them.
Yeah,
So, but the way I like to start my podcast, just a little bit about you and your story and who you are. You can take it any direction you want to go,
yeah.
and we'll just backtrack and work up to where we are today.
So yeah, I'll make it short and simple. So it's because it could go on for days
Yeah, no,
probably.
I understand. Yeah, quick little synopsis of what you think is important, and then we'll kind of dive into an area that we want to chat with.
Perfect. So originally from South Shore of Boston, so I'm a little bit south of let's say Dorchester, I guess. Couple years back, probably 5 years at this point, I had graduated from school. From there, I didn't have much direction. All throughout school, I was a student that just wasn't very attentive. I just, for one reason or another, this is for another time probably. I never was able to comprehend what I was taught, and I had no future with the education system. I'm a big advocate to
Hmm.
go against how people are taught today. That's one huge thing for me.
Hmm.
That being said, at the age of 17 years old, I had no direction. I had no opportunities really with the school route. I ended up getting a job doing door-to-door sales. So door-to-door sales. Never
Hmm.
in my life I had ever expected I'm going to do something like that. I was the most introverted to myself type person. And then I got a position doing something that is so extroverted, knocking at someone's door and selling products like solar.
Hmm.
Yeah, are you familiar with solar?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for about 6 to 7 months, I sold solar door to door here in Boston,
Okay.
most of the North Shore.
Hmm.
After finally getting over that, like let's say, pain of what it felt like to go to someone's door and try to sell them something, being such an introverted person, I ended up moving to Walnut Creek area, San Francisco, so the northern part of California. From there, I got into another door-to-door company, solar sales, with
Hmm.
that was actually created by my brother.
Okay.
So from there, door-to-door sales there for about a year, 2 years. Came back after the fact and got into the real estate business, and now it's just full force real estate business,
Hmm.
consulting, coaching, and really just selling commercial, residential, and new construction.
Yeah,
That's
that's it's an interesting little story because and I know this because I had listened to the interview that you'd done with Billy, but you're very young,
yeah.
okay, and very driven.
Mhm.
So um when you got into real estate and being a coach, things of that nature, like everything that you do now, how did you overcome just the age gap that you have with some of these older guys that where you don't have as much life experience as them? How do you kind of approach that?
I think it definitely comes from certainty. I mean, it all comes from certainty in myself. Like I had said, at the age of 17, I was so uncertain. I was so introverted. You put me in front of this camera right now, like even right now, I'm semi-nervous as I'm
Hmm.
speaking to you, but I'm willing to acknowledge that it's just a reaction, right? It's not a real thing to me.
Hmm.
So from 17, knowing I didn't really have much, or I didn't really have anything to show for myself, I didn't have a direction, going to something like door-to-door sales, where it's the most extroverted person does something like that. The only way to be good at that is to be extroverted and to be able to sell people and be certain about your product. So at that point where I'm like, okay, listen, I was the most introverted person before. Somehow I got myself to be so extroverted when I choose to be. It's a choice.
Hmm.
I'm like, how can my age be the factor from someone listening to me and not listening to me at this point?
Hmm.
So age for a couple of years, I can definitely admit was a concern of mine. But now with the track record of selling properties, selling solar at the age of 17 years old, 18 years old, 19 years old, $1 million deals. I mean, it's just I know I can do it at this point. Someone says, "Oh, you're so young, you look so young." I don't really care for it.
Hmm.
It's an instilled feeling of certainty that it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter.
So, do you recall when that switch started to happen for you? like those first couple knocks that you had on doors
Mhm.
versus towards the end of your door knocking career? How did that shift start to happen?
So I can tell you, I always can remember it because it was like the worst feeling ever. I can remember the first door I knocked. I went
Mhm,
up these stairs, I knocked on the door, she answered, she came out, and I just stuttered. I stuttered my ass off, to be completely
mhm,
honest. So awkward. I was so freaking awkward.
mhm,
From that point up until October of 2019, I think it was the 15th of October 19th, um, I was very nervous. After that point, I'm just like, there's no more fear. Nothing can, no one can really do anything so bad to me. I went through so many things that is so much more drastic than me feeling nervous or me
mm,
feeling like I'm not good enough to do something or I'm not old enough to do something.
mhm,
We all deal with traumatic experiences and awkward experiences and uncomfortable experiences. Those things are so minute at this point.
mhm. When was the point where you started to have less of the thoughts of "I'm not good enough" and
Mhm.
more of the thoughts to "I am good enough"? How did you yourself change those for yourself? Because I think that's what changes a lot of the
Yeah, of
behaviors and actions that we do.
course. I think it was that's a great question. I have to tell you that when I could financially make decisions on my
Mhm,
own, like bigger decisions, let's say buying a nice car or getting a nice apartment or traveling based off my own production, because there's two different types of production, right?
mhm,
You can be a W-2 and be working for someone else. You're
mhm,
relying on someone else to pay you, right? And then there's a 1099 or self-employed persons where if you don't work, you don't eat. It's the same thing, for the most part, it's the same thing, right? If you
mhm,
don't go show up to work, you're not going to get paid. And if you don't show up to work as a 1099, you're not going to get paid. But when I realized I could literally produce money
mhm,
myself,
mhm.
then I'm just like, dude, there's nothing else. Like that's at that point, there's so much certainty. You're putting your life in your hands. You're in complete control. So that was
Mhm.
probably the switch. And that was
Okay.
probably three years ago. I'd say 3 years ago.
So was that all in terms of, like, real estate for those deals?
No,
Or what
solar,
were the first couple oh, it was solar, okay, it was still solar
solar.
deals.
Yeah,
S
the
so
solar deals.
did you go from door knocking to someone that was closing the deals?
I was doing everything.
Oh,
So
okay, okay.
I would knock on their door. I'd say, "Hey, Jamie, this is blank." Like
Mhm,
I would give them the whole pitch, whatever it may be.
mhm.
Schedule a time for next week. I'd come back in person, sit down with them, close them, and then get installed 2 weeks later.
Yeah, so how did you start getting better at closing the deals? Was it just the repetition of it, or did you start to study, um, more of these, like, what solar is and, like, just making sure that you know every question that they may ask? Like,
Mhm.
what were the terms of, uh how'd you find success in closing deals when it came to solar?
So I would say it's like honestly, the information about the product didn't even matter. Like
Okay.
maybe 10%, maybe 10% of it was how knowledgeable I was about the product I was selling. The
Mhm.
90% was just social skills. And the
Okay.
social skills came from the point that, if someone has an objection or they have a concern, I understand and I can acknowledge why they're feeling that type of way. But
Mm.
at that point in time, it's like they see me and they see what I'm telling them and they see that I'm a young person, but I have that social skill and that good communication skills that makes them feel a little bit more certain that what they're buying makes sense, right? I don't
Okay.
come off as a snake salesperson, snake oil salesperson.
Mhm.
I come off as I'm a straight shooter. I know what I'm talking about, 10% of it. And then
Mhm.
another 90% is, hey, listen, I'm a person too. I'm a human being too. I acknowledge your reactions, your emotions, your concerns, but let's just make this happen.
So, do you think that most communication skill, like, when you're consulting for a business,
Mhm.
because that's part of what you do as a sales
Right.
consultant, right? That's what you had
Yeah,
mentioned?
correct.
So, when it comes to communication skills, what are things that we should start to look at to become better communicators then in the sense of, selling to one another?
Mhm. That's great. That's a great question, actually. I would say from selling from one to another, the biggest thing to me is I can't ask, let's say if we're talking about a product right here,
Mhm,
that's worth $5,000, for
mhm,
example, and I'm selling this product. and I ask someone, hey, you should buy this product. This is a great product. It's $5,000. It's a one-time payment. You have to make that payment right now. That is correlated to if you yourself have bought something for $5,000 in one payment.
Mhm.
So the thing is, if you're going to ask someone to buy something for $5,000, but you've never bought something for 5,000,
Mhm.
that doesn't make much sense. Do you understand what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yep. So
Like,
far.
if I'm going to ask someone to buy something, my communication skills, it all comes back to certainty. If I bought something for $5,000, then I feel okay asking people for $5,000, right?
Okay.
Do you get that? I guess it's a little complicated.
Yes, but so um, you had mentioned that you've been doing like towards the end of the solar career, you had done $1 million deals, if
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
yeah.
So have you bought things for $1 million in order to
No.
be able to? Okay, then
So
explain.
I see
Yes,
what you're saying.
please.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
the $1 million deals, I'll clarify. That is real estate. The million
Okay.
dollar deals is real estate. Right when I got into real
Yep.
estate, that's what we started to do. Those $1 million deals for real estate, you're really not, I don't want to say you're selling, you're not really selling as much. Someone is coming out, they're looking for something similar to that, and you tell them all the highlights and the things you can get from buying this $1 million house. Where solar isn't really something that is necessarily needed. It's not a product that
Okay.
you're needed, right?
Okay.
You have the poles, the wires, and get the electricity from another source other than solar. So
Hmm.
solar, you're providing value and why it could be a good product for them.
Hmm.
But real estate, a lot of people are like, hey, listen, I have a family of five. I need a bigger house. The reality is a house with 5 bedrooms is $1 million. They just need that, right? Solar
Okay.
isn't something that's needed. So it's a little different how you're pushing the product.
Okay. So most of the real estate deals that you do, are you going and finding those deals or are people coming to you for those deals?
So both, but I
Okay.
can tell you that probably 50 to 60% of my business is
Hmm.
me finding deals for specific niches or niches. And those are
Okay.
things like builders. So
Okay.
builders are looking for opportunities that they can either tear down a house, fix a house, or put up a new house, right? So I'm looking for land deals, I'm looking for derelict properties, and I'm looking for properties that are distressed with banks, like foreclosures or pre-foreclosures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was your first deal like for real estate? Walk me through the process of how that kind of happened.
So yeah, we haven't even dived into like how I actually get my business.
Yeah.
So I can
I
bring
mean,
to
you
the
don't have to give your entire model, but
no,
I
it's
mean,
very simple, and I'll give it
yeah,
away. It's like the most simple thing.
yeah.
Um, my first deal was through an expired. So an expired is a term real estate agents and brokers use as a property that was on the market. It was on the market longer than the contract they originally signed with the agent was,
Hmm.
and then expires off the market. It's no longer even available to show at that point. I'd call the list, I would call 100, 150 of these people every single day. And that's how I got my first deal. I just was heavy in calling and prospecting. So the thing is, I started with the door to door, which is in person. This is the hardest form of sales I've ever been in. And I moved and shifted to phone call sales, which
Hmm.
is a lot easier for me. It's myself because I can
Okay.
make a million phone calls in a day, but I can only knock maybe 100, 200 doors a day because you only have so much daylight,
Hmm.
right? But all of my prospecting has started with simple phone calls or personal relationships. No social media, no nothing.
Hmm. Okay.
Uh,
So where did that first deal come from? I don't
and
know if I missed that or
yeah, an expired call. So it
yeah.
was
So
actually.
what?
Mhm.
I'm a little confused on how you found it personally. That's what I
Okay.
mean. Yeah.
So there's resources as agents we have
Hmm.
that auto populate all expired properties.
Okay.
So it's like a website, let's say. There's multiple
Hmm.
different websites that you can use. It's public
Hmm.
information at that point when a property expires.
Okay.
So at that point, you see these numbers every day. There's a list of people's properties that didn't sell. Every
Hmm.
day they expire, more of them expire. You call these people up, you try to connect with the homeowner. Once you connect with that homeowner, you find pain points, I guess, like, why didn't it sell? Is it one of these three reasons? Was it in poor condition? Was it the agent or was it overpriced?
Hmm.
You set an appointment, you meet with them in person, and then you just work the deal. You got to find
Okay.
them a price and you get it listed.
Okay. Now, do you have your real estate license now?
Correct.
Yeah, and did you at the time of your first deal as well?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, that makes more sense. I thought that you had just found it out of the blue. You were
Oh.
on Zillow
Yeah,
and you found an expired deal of some sort, and that's
yeah,
that's where the confusion came in for me,
I see, yeah.
you
I
know?
talk so fast too, so that's
No,
what
no,
it is.
that's okay. That's all right. So, um, once once that deal kinda happened, have you had deals where they have went, uh, south now? Or have most of the deals that you've done been in good standing?
No, they have went south. They've went south.
Okay. So oh, continue.
Yeah, I
So
just
with
think,
you
like, you need to experience, especially in the business, for them to go south for you to get better. Like, I have an example I'm thinking of where, good client of mine, a good friend, they were buying a property, and 2 lenders right before the closing, I kept passing their loan off to different lenders because they kept on denying the loan. Eventually, I found, I think it was the 3rd or the 4th lender that eventually approved the loan. So, like, I wouldn't know how to do that because it's gonna happen again. It's bound to
Mhm,
happen again. If you do enough transactions, you're gonna have 1 or 2 that fall apart a year probably.
mhm,
But if you don't go through that, then you're never gonna figure out, like, how to solve that issue moving
mhm.
forward. But I've had multiple deals that go south, but I can fix them. I don't think I've ever had something that, uh, I wasn't able to fix per se.
So you haven't had like a big like loss as
No,
of right now?
no.
Okay. Were there any, I'll say just losses in general, um, throughout your life that you took a lot from, like a learning perspective
Mhm,
wise, that didn't necessarily have to do with business, but
mhm.
how it shaped you as a person?
Yeah. For sure. I think, I think I personally I had dealt with a situation where probably 2015, 2016, I had moved into, an apartment,
Mhm,
and I was way over my head on getting this apartment, like, way over my head. This is when I first started being self-employed, and I'm just like, "Oh, I'm buying this, I'm buying that, I'm gonna do all this nice stuff." And, I actually never I don't know if I ever opened up about this point, but way over my head, and it got to the point where they were demanding so much money, right? And this was like a bigger complex. This isn't
okay.
like a mom and pop owning a 3 family or something.
Mhm,
And I had to deal with, like, at that point, dealing with a, possibility of being evicted, right?
okay.
Possibility of being evicted. And in that moment in time, I'm so happy I experienced it then and not
Mhm,
in the future, because I had learned how savvy you can be in, like, a bad situation, like how easily you can kind of shift the direction, or move the direction in which you're going very quick if you have the know-how, right? The
okay.
know-how of doing something. So that kind of just that situation right there, because it was very stressful. You can say
Mhm,
you've dealt with, oh, I've dealt with being potentially evicted, but unless you're in that situation, like, right now, you don't know the type of stress you feel, right?
mhm,
So that experience right there itself of being, okay, you're getting evicted, like, you got to be out in 20 days or 15 days, morphed me into that person who's, like, not as fearful to take action, and or to, try something new. And also the fact that everything's going to be fine. It gave me
mm.
that, yeah, everything's going to be fine. No matter what, you're always going to figure it out, especially if
Yeah.
you're an upstat person.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there all of these experiences that you are going to have, think
Mhm.
about all the experiences that you've had, but we're still having this conversation here right now, even after all of those experiences, you
Exactly.
know?
Mhm.
Um, so my next point, like taking away from that, I had it and then I went off on a little like small little sentence there.
Mhm.
What was I gonna ask you? How old were you when you were getting no, this is where I want to go with first.
Mhm.
Um, so do you think that in that situation you had it was kind of like back against the wall type of situation?
Yeah.
How for you does that impact your decision making? Having your back against the wall, do you think that you're someone that more thrives in that, like
Mhm.
live or die type of situation? Or do you need a little bit of comfort in order to have a clearer head when making decisions?
That's a great question. I would honestly say for myself personally, how I am, I operate myself, I operate the best, the more stressed I am.
Okay.
Literally, the more stressed I am. So I have put myself, there's been times where I've been very comfortable and comfy and like, oh, I don't have to work today. I don't got to do this. I don't got to do that. I'll go take a break. I'll go travel. That is when I put myself in like the most uncomfortable situations.
Mm,
I found that if you're not feeling that feeling of stress or thrill, me myself just personally, I need to force myself to feel it, and I'll put myself in a situation like that because I don't feel like I'm living otherwise. If
mm,
everything's all sunshine and rainbows, I don't need to do anything to get by in life, or there's no fulfillment, I will put myself in that situation.
okay.
Now, just because I know I always make it out, I'm not fearful of what could happen because
Mhm,
it's never happened. It's never been so bad that I'm gonna die, right? But for me myself, I put my back against the wall as much as possible,
mhm.
honestly.
So, what are you doing on a day-to-day, weekly basis in order to not put yourself in bad situations per se, but a little bit of more uncomfortable situations where you're going to have that heightened
Mhm.
decision making for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, small thing, pretty simple things. Like, today I woke up, I'm very sore. I'm training for the Boston Marathon is in 2 weeks.
Hmm.
I'm gonna be running that. I will just put myself in a situation where I create this goal. Like, if I'm feeling like, oh, I'm gonna do 3 miles, then I'll up it to 4 miles. I'll say I'll wake up first thing as my feet hit the floor. I know I have to run. I'll say I'll do an easy 3 miles. Right when my mind says, let's do 3 miles, I'm gonna go do 4 miles.
Hmm.
Or I'll put myself in a situation where I'm gonna call that 2 million or $3 million listing or expired listing that's uncomfortable just to expand myself.
Hmm.
Same with business ideas. Like if I was to make a boatload of money, I don't just sit on the money. That's not what I'm doing. I'm taking that money and I will spend every single dollar of it to put it towards some other business venture to see if something happens. And at that point in time, when you get rid of all that cash, all of that liquid cash you have, then you're back in a movement of, let's say, high necessity level. You now need
Hmm.
to make money again quick. So things like that, just getting rid of, the less you have, the better I feel, is
Hmm.
me personally. And that doesn't have to just be money. It can be anything else.
Yeah. What is how important has it been for you to have a good physical routine
Mhm.
along to go with your business there?
Very, very important.
Okay.
Honestly, physical routine comes for me before anything,
Mhm.
whether it be stretching in the morning or running 5 to 10 to 20 miles or just lifting weights. I won't pick up a phone call. I will not answer a text until I've done something. Otherwise, I'm speaking and I'm talking to people in like more of a reactionary tone. I'm
Okay.
not like, I don't wake up and I'm like jolly and happy. I know all the
Mhm.
bullshit I have to deal with throughout the day. So the
Mhm.
only way for me myself to get rid of that feeling and talk at like a rational, leveled way, I need to work out. So 7 days a week, I'll do something. It's very important.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, Now has this just been something that you've built over time, or has it always been easy for you to kinda start by working out? Um,
Mhm.
Pretty open
Yeah,
question
I
there.
think it's always been pretty easy for me to work out.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, and I'll do it on like, if I'll do it in the most uncomfortable, un uncomfortable and just like not perfect situation. Let's say I haven't eaten 24 hours, whatever. I fell asleep the night before, I hadn't eaten dinner, and I wake up and I'm starving. I'm thinking, dude, I gotta go run before I can eat anything or move into any direction. So like it is literally number one.
Mm.
If it doesn't have to be anything crazy, it can be going for a walk, stretching, lifting weights, or going for a run. It doesn't really matter.
Now you make it really into like a fight or flight type response when it comes to this is like
Yeah.
the what I'm gathering from it.
Hmm.
So let's say that you do get up and you feel like running, okay?
Hmm.
Would you then go and try to make the situation less comfortable for yourself? Like, let's say that you got up, you were super motivated, you're like, I'm gonna run 10 miles today. Are you gonna
Yeah.
try to make like it a point to yourself to, okay, I feel good and I'm gonna go and run the 10 miles? Or
Hmm.
are you gonna go and be like, ah, you know what? That's not good enough. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna run 10 miles barefoot, or I'm going to go and run 15 miles, like something along those lines. Like, what's the thought process behind when you are motivated then?
Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, yeah, when when you're feeling good, at the moment of you feeling good, you sign yourself up for things that you wouldn't have otherwise, like once you're going through the pain.
Mhm,
So I will set myself up for something like that. Let's say it's 10 miles to my gym. I'll run 10 miles, and then I'll go lift weights.
mhm.
Or I will try things like barefoot running. Actually, it's funny you brought it up. I just started trying to do that, not on cement
Okay.
yet, but
Mhm,
more, in grass and turf and things.
mhm.
But yeah, when I'm feeling very motivated, I try to really extend myself
Okay.
to the
Yeah.
point where you're like, shit, why did I do this?
Okay.
Right.
Um, so how many, I would love to hear now, like transitioning back into a little bit more of just like sales and things like that. How
Mhm.
many calls are you making per day on average?
Probably on average, I would say about, let's say, um, probably 80 to 120.
Okay. Now, is that every day?
Monday through Friday, sometimes a
Monday through
Saturday or
Friday.
Sunday. There's always
Okay.
one off day, but there's always a day, probably on the weekend, either a Saturday or Sunday, depending how I feel, that'll hit
Mhm.
up 80 to 120.
Okay. Now, someone that like, let's say you're coaching or mentoring that doesn't have that capacity to work to call 80 to 100 people yet. Like
Mhm.
they get to 10 and they're like, yeah, it's not really for me.
Yeah.
How do you approach that situation? Or
Mhm.
maybe it's not, let me rephrase. Instead of um, oh, it's not really for me. Let's say that they're getting to 50 calls and they just don't want to make
Mhm.
any more calls. What is the first plan of attack for you to go and uh help change that mindset?
Mhm. Well, it really is all dependent upon people's personal situations. So for me, when we're speaking about what you do want to do and you don't want to do, I relate it all back to necessity level, what you
Mhm,
need to do to survive, right? So if you're like on your last dollar and rent's due and your car payments due, and God forbid you have a kid too and he needs to eat, if you're still thinking about, oh, I don't want to do this or this isn't fun, it's selfish. I find it to be very selfish. So
mhm,
when I'm speaking to someone, before I even have them make phone calls, I ask them, like, financially, what type of situation are you in right now? What obligations do you have to meet? And if they tell me, oh, I got to get my kid through school, I'm barely paying my bills, I have all these medical bills, I'm hungry, whatever it may be, I'm like, okay, then you should not be telling me I don't want to do it. It all comes off of what you need to do. Nothing I do. I heard this quote, and it kind of related to me. It's like, I don't find my purpose in life to be happy. I don't find
mhm.
that to be happy. I
Okay.
find that life is based off of the fact that we're just being tested to see how hard it is to kill us, right?
Mm, mhm.
That's what I find it to be for myself. I look at it at that standpoint. It's like, I'm not here to be smiling. I'm not here to be thrilled. I'm
Okay.
looking at how far I can be pushed until I'm killed, right? Not literally
Okay.
physically
Mhm.
shot. You know what I mean?
Okay. Then how do you
It's intense. It's a little crazy for some people, but
well,
it
that's
works.
okay. If that's what works for you, then who
Yeah.
cares? You
Yeah.
know? Like, I don't think it'd work for me, but
Mhm.
we're both different, we're
Yeah.
supposed to be. So,
Correct.
how do you approach your emotions then? What are
Mhm.
your thoughts behind the emotions that you have on a day-to-day basis?
So funny. Uh, I love that. I think it's like I go to chronic. I definitely go to chronic anger or like
Okay.
aggressiveness,
Mhm.
not in a dangerous fashion. So I don't mean in a dangerous fashion,
Mhm.
but if something isn't going right, I never let myself go below anger, which below anger on my scale of things would be like apathy,
Mhm.
sadness,
Okay.
right? Once you're in sadness, it's like it's hard to move, it's hard to get out of bed,
Mm.
it's hard to do anything. But at least at anger, you have that aggressiveness to go do something about it, right? So, I mean, typically, it's going to be going from, if things aren't going well or if it's frustrating, I go straight to anger, or I go straight to like high tone, which would be like I don't know, like, I don't know, just someone who's high toned, like not
Okay.
happy per se, but
Hmm.
more mellowed out, more mellowed
Okay.
out. Yeah, but
So
never,
when so
but
when you say that, are
mhm.
you saying that like sadness to you is not an emotion that you have or something that you won't allow yourself to have? Or you
Mhm.
can phrase it anyway, just that like I'm understanding where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, so growing some, I can go through this real quick, and this will relate to it. I
Please.
grew up in a Greek household, right?
Hmm.
I come from a Greek family. My father is from northern Greece, Thessaloniki. It's fairly close to Bulgaria, Bulgaria, the country right above it. And he grew up, him and his family grew up in a village, like a small village. And he was in the, he was in the military over there, and he went through a lot of hardship, like a lot of hardship before he moved to the US.
Hmm.
And his biggest thing he would tell me, I remember him looking in my eyes, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 years old. And he tells me, Vasily, never let yourself get sad. Never let yourself get sad. And since that moment, you can be on the verge. I mean, there's some things that call for you being sad. If like a loved one has died, or something really traumatic had happened, like
Hmm.
that's rational to be very sad.
Hmm.
But to let other things come into your life, like maybe things are just tough, maybe you're not making the money you need, or maybe you're hungry, or maybe like physically hungry, and maybe things aren't in the prime condition you want them to be. Letting sadness come into it, for me at least, holds me down as if I'm like cement to the ground,
Hmm.
cement to the ground. But anger or something a little bit higher than that is always going to put you in that state of aggressiveness. And being
Okay.
aggressive to me is much better. So I can experience sadness,
Hmm.
but I usually try to go down to just anger or aggression, or trying to just get things done.
Hmm.
Productivity.
That cleared it much better for me because the way I had interpreted it the first time, it was like, no, I don't experience sadness. But
No.
now,
Mhm.
the way you explained it is when I have sadness, it's rational, where you're
Yeah,
not someone that's just gonna sit there and feel sorry for yourself.
correct.
That's more of what like
Yeah.
I just needed to be explained to me
Yeah, yeah.
from
No,
my end.
I definitely experience
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Probably not as often,
yeah.
but like it's only when it really is called for.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, to keep beating at this point though, anger and frustration, or I'll stick with just the word anger. Anger is the main driver of
Yeah,
why you do most things on a day-to-day basis. Yes or no?
I would say correct. I would say,
Okay.
mhm. But anger
Um,
for a different reason. It's the fact
not
that
angry at the world. Oh,
yeah.
continue. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off
No.
there.
It's anger that you're not in a place where you're meant to be.
Mm,
And you're thinking to yourself, like, shit, this is ridiculous. Why am I dealing with these such small issues when there's so many people to be helping?
okay.
So it's angry at yourself for not being somewhere else. It's not angry at
Mm,
other people. It's more angry at yourself for not being
mhm.
somewhere else where you can reach more people and hit your potential.
Okay. So what are the do you think that when you get to that place then,
Mhm.
okay, will you stop using anger as the fuel? Or is this a destination that you will never get to?
You're never going to hit this destination. Like it's actually impossible. I think it's
Okay.
actually, so far it's impossible. No one's done, just like a lot of other people. I mean, we're reaching for something in the stratosphere, like so
Mhm,
far above into the clouds, that your entire life is going to be just you trying to get there. No matter how good things get, the money is not
mhm,
the drive.
mhm,
The cars aren't the drive. It's just like the um the accomplishments. Accomplishments are
mhm,
more to me than anything else. I love accomplishments. Accomplishments are the best feeling in the world. There's nothing
mhm.
else like
So this anger that you use as a driver for
that. Mhm.
each day, okay, you're using it because you're not in a place that you want to be or feel you should be.
Correct.
And then this place that you will never attain to. So what I'm gathering here is that you will use anger as a driver to
Yeah.
get farther and farther and farther and accomplish more and more and more and more, but
Mhm.
you'll never get to a destination where you won't use anger.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I haven't hit that point, so I don't know.
Okay, okay.
No, so
I'm just, yeah, I'm trying to
hopefully,
piece it all together, you
yeah,
know? These,
hopefully you're gonna get, it's gonna dismiss itself, but it's just you're never satisfied. There's like a feeling of no no satisfaction. Like you're never gonna feel 100% this is good enough. So it's a point of never being complacent.
okay,
And if it takes to be aggressive and really push and push and push for the rest of my life to go after that, then it's what you're willing to live for, right?
okay,
That's the drive.
okay. So let me ask you this now. How do you feel about living in the present moment then?
Mm.
How do you approach living in just a present moment? What are the
Oh my
thoughts
God.
that you have around that?
It's like unheard of for me. It's
Okay.
very difficult. It's very, very difficult. I don't think it's a good thing to not be able to live in the present moment, but
Mhm.
I'm always thinking future. I'm
Mm.
always thinking future, like as soon as tomorrow and as late as 5 years.
Okay.
Very
Um,
important.
then how do you approach, like, on a day to day, all right?
Mhm.
And if you were to live in the present moment, like things that you accomplish, are you appreciating them in this moment then?
Honestly, the only time appreciating them is leading up to them. But
Mhm.
once I've done them, I'm just like, okay, lame. Like to the next thing, like to the next thing. It
Mm.
loses its spice the day of. Like the marathon I'm gonna be running. I've done a bunch of half
Mhm.
marathons and other races. This
Mhm.
is gonna be my first Boston marathon,
Mhm.
and I'm excited. But I'm excited to be done and then get to the next thing. The next thing is going to be an Ironman or an ultra or the triathlons.
Mhm.
So I'm really just looking for the next thing. The
Mhm.
pull for them from the next thing is what works. I just know I need to do the marathon
Yep.
to see how capable I am to be able to do an Ironman, to be able to do an ultra. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So to round all of this talk of emotions and how you uh, basically use them as your drivers every day in life, where and if you do, where do you find happiness on a day to day
Mhm.
or a yearly, weekly basis? Do you use that emotion? Like,
Mhm.
how do you kind of um, just round table all of
Yeah.
what I'm saying here? Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense.
Yeah,
I
please.
think for me the happiness point comes from, I mean, definitely being a productive person, like
Okay.
knowing I checked off my list every day, did this,
Mhm.
did this, did this. Then also above that is just helping someone else.
Mm.
Like if I could just help people for the rest of my life and do nothing else,
Mhm.
I would feel fulfilled. To see someone, a
Okay.
single mother, for example,
Mhm.
not be able to take care of their kids to the best of their ability and change that person's life into a point where they're their own business owner, they can support their kids, they can put them through college. That's a very fulfilling feeling,
Mhm.
you know?
Now, what about this then? If I was to play devil's advocate in a sense, but kind of not really. What
Yeah.
if you had to get rid of your business, but it
Mhm.
meant that you helped 100 people? Is that
Mhm.
something you'd be willing to do then?
Totally. Totally.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, then when it comes to accomplishments and building a business, building this empire that you're creating,
Hmm.
what if you were not allowed, or what if you couldn't obtain all of those for your personal self, but every single person around you that you came in contact with, you knew that you helped them?
That
What
is
would be
that emotion right there, that is total fulfillment. That's
yeah.
like some I would give up. I mean, me myself, um, honestly, like it sounds extreme, and I'm saying it, and I'm putting myself in that situation. I'm trying to. It's obviously not occurring right now.
Mhm.
I would give everything to other people as long as I knew they took advantage of it
Mm,
and they did appreciate it, right?
okay.
See, I find, some people are like, oh, like, don't care what other, if people don't recognize how good you did to them, like, whatever, big deal.
Mhm.
Find appreciation, just even like a simple thank you.
Yeah.
Like, thank you. I'll run 100 miles and I'll do this and I'll do that for you. If you say thank you, it makes it all worth it.
Mm,
So,
that's fair.
like, I think we have a problem nowadays. This is just an example. You
Mhm.
open a door for someone, and they don't say anything.
Mm,
And I'm like,
yep.
you're ruining it for everyone else. I want to do this for you, but I just want a simple thank you, you
Yeah.
know? So, but moral of the story, yes, I would give everything away I could throughout my entire life to make other people, feel, be put in a better position and, feel better and help other people. Because if you can help one person, they're going to help another person. And it's going to be a crazy effect on the society.
Yeah. I do like that example of holding the door because I mean, there's both sides of the coin to it where, hey, I held the door for you and I can't control what you're gonna do or say and
Yeah.
whatever. But at the same time, like for me, like if I'm like in a mood, not really thinking, or I don't know
Mhm.
what goes through my head, but I'll just say thank you just loud enough for them. That way they hear me, things like that. Um, yeah, I feel like this is a good spot to kind of leave off on if you're good
Yeah.
with that. You're a very, very interesting individual. This was a fun conversation
Yeah. It was a
um,
blast.
for me. I have, just because I think that the way that both of us are wired are
Mhm.
so different, that's what
Mhm.
made this conversation really fun for me because I was able to learn so much more than I normally do from a podcast of someone that's more like, not, I want to say like-minded, but I think we are both like-minded in a
We
sense.
are in a way, I
I think
think.
that the way that we operate and um the way we use, like, I guess, our emotions and what we've been through
Yeah.
to propel us to where we want to go. I think
Mhm.
that just the way that we operate is different, but
Yeah.
where we want to go is in a similar sense,
For
which I
sure.
think made it more fun, you know?
So, like certain people, like we talked about Wes Watson before, like Wes
Mhm.
Watson, how he uses his experiences is
Mhm.
totally different than someone like John Maxwell.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But they all
Mhm.
go to the same point. It's just their emotions and how they use their emotions to
Mhm.
propel them to where they want to be. It's just different, a little bit different,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
'Cause, like, when I look, there were certain things that you had said where I was like, "Oh, I definitely see Wes when you're speaking." But, like, with me, I resonate with Wes, and I like a lot of the topics that he chats about, but the
Yeah.
way that he gets to that destination
He
is
gets his
not
point.
always the way that I would think to do that, you know?
Yeah, it's
Which it gives you,
extremely.
it I think it's good that two people like us can go and sit down where we don't agree on everything, but we
Right.
can have a conversation where we can see both sides of things.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool, like, I think that's the
Yeah.
best way to have a conversation with someone,
It's just
you
what's
know?
worked. It's just what's worked better for each individual. Like I honestly wish I could be more like, let's say, toned down and be like more of a John Maxwell type thing.
Mhm.
But for me, just how my life has been, I've never, just me personally, I've never been able to get my point across or do the things I want to do by acting that way. But other
Yeah.
people are much better like doing
Mhm.
it. Like some people can be a million miles away from me in terms of success, and they did it the peaceful, quiet, give, I don't know, like more gifting, I guess you could say, and a nicer talker. But it just doesn't work, it just
Yeah.
doesn't work for people,
Yeah.
you know?
I think that that's the point that we're getting across is just like there's more than one way to skin a cat, and
Yeah.
you're doing things your way because it works for you and figuring it out the way that it works for you, where I'm doing the things that I think are going to work better for me. And there's no right or wrong way,
There's nothing, no.
you know? So that's
Especially
what it
today,
is.
man. There's no right or wrong,
This-
especially today,
yeah,
you
no.
know?
So, but yeah, this was awesome. Why don't you just give the viewers
Mhm.
where we can find you or look
Yeah.
to work with you in the future,
Yeah,
as long as
so
you're cool with that. Yeah.
you guys can check me out on I'm most active on Instagram. It's Vasilis Vasilis underscore Axios Axios. I share entrepreneur content, I guess some fitness content too, and a lot of consulting and coaching. So I love to, connect with people there.
All right. Perfect. And that'll wrap it up for us today. All right. Vasily, thank you very much for
It's a
coming on
pleasure,
today.
Shawn.
All right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys.